testing, 1, 2. Sorry. Oh, do I need to stand up?
Oh, it's completely up to you. Would you like to stand up with me?
Yes, please. I just want to see you, Alex.
We'd just really like to share with us, you know, your interest and passion.
Yeah, obviously, well, I'm sure that a lot of you, well, hopefully saw the video that went viral when I took on the panel at Good Morning Britain. And you know what, it's so funny because I had over 1,000 messages. I had thousands and thousands of messages, but I had over 1,000 messages asking if I was going to be sacked. They said, really, really, really happy that you spoke up. Thanks for speaking for us, but I hope you don't lose your job. And I just thought, actually, you know, that's like quite a sad place to be in 2019, where you feel that you can't speak up and say something when you feel really strongly about it. And for me, sitting there that day, I came into work and I didn't even know that the panel was going to go that way. And, you know, I sat there and listened and listened and listened and watched people hold up papers and go, this is a black problem, these are all black boys, look at them, blah, 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 blah. And I'm there like going, okay, you're talking about me. Like, so I just tried to keep calm. And I looked across and I was like, hold on, no disrespect, but I know my colleagues and I know some of the people that are on the panel, and I was like, you don't even understand fully, you have an idea of what the current situation is, but you've not lived on the block. I'm not professed to have lived on the block, but I grew up in a council house when I was a kid. I grew up all around it, but I had one saving grace, or many saving graces, that I had good parents and I had a dad, a strong black male role model that was able to kind of set an example for me, which is why I believe I never fell into a gang, whereas some people, well, my next door neighbour did fall into a gang. So, you know, it can happen, but I feared my dad, basically. You know, we used to travel home through St. Paul's in Bristol, where you live literally on the edge of it. And he used to say, Alex, if I ever see you over there standing with those boys, I will bust your ass in front of every single one of them, right? So from day, I was just like, woo, okay, that's not the lifestyle for me, so I knew. But coming back to why I kind of had to speak up on Good Morning Britain was because I just thought I can't sit there and be quiet. And when the guy said build more prisons, we need more money to build more prisons, and I just thought to myself, that's not the answer. For me, it is about investing that money that you want to build the prison with back into the community, because if you don't invest in the environment, you won't change anything. We've still got a massive problem with poverty, and when I speak to a lot of boys that are going through the lifestyle, you know, one of their main drivers for joining the gang, okay, some of it is obviously because of lack of family, perhaps lack of role model, but a lot of it is down to money. These boys want to make money. Now, I was lucky that when I was growing up as a kid, my dad set an example. I watched him get up for work at 5 a.m. every single day. So when I grew up, I just knew that I had to get up early and go to work. So at the age of 14, I went to go and get a little Saturday job. But lots of boys, they don't have the capabilities or the support to do that. So it really is about investing in the environment and showing them a different way. You know, I came in late to the session earlier, but you know, it was interesting to hear what people were saying about, you know, do you have to be gang affiliated or, you know, to have been a gang member in order to entice another gang member out of a gang? I believe it takes all of us to do it. You know, we can't just depend on someone that's been in a gang that has had their own flaws to be responsible for pulling somebody out of a gang and setting them on the right path. I think it's going to take everyone from both sides. You know, it takes a village to raise a child at the end of the day. I think there's a lot to be said for the lack of community. As much as we think that we're a big, strong community, I think that we're so broken down in 2019 after years and years and years of the same, I don't want to swear, but the same stuff going around. You know, it's a vicious circle as far as I'm concerned. And I think we need to really come together and realise that there's some things that we need help with, but there's also a lot that we can do to help ourselves. And one thing I strongly believe is that although there needs to be more services for children, there needs to be more services for parents. because we put a lot of blame on parents, but when you look at the parents and what they've been through, sometimes it is history, a lot of the time, it is history repeating itself. So we need to really think about how we invest, and I think the only way that we can see real change, so I did a documentary, or as some of you may know, like my cousin was stabbed to death in London a couple of months ago. Just because of timing, I worked out that ITV had already commissioned me to make this documentary called Knife Crime and Me. And about 10 days into it, my cousin got killed. So it became very personal as well. So I've been through, what you guys have been through as well. And I went to Scotland and looked at the example that they're working with up there. I went to the violence reduction units, and I understand that the government have got £100 million to basically set up these violence reduction units up and down the UK. So I hope that Nottingham may be one of those places where you do get a violence reduction unit, and it's going to take a real investment, a substantial amount of money to invest and empower people, and people that are on the ground that can actually make a real difference. So people that have a true understanding of what it's actually going to take. It's going to take so many different services coming together, and that's why in Scotland, in Glasgow, which was the murder capital of Europe, they had to take this public health approach where it was all services, all people coming together, and they have made some substantial changes and had some really great results. The one thing I think that is slightly different when you come further south is that you're dealing with a melting pot of ethnic minorities and different needs, different cultural understanding. So I think there will need to be some amendments made in order for it to work successfully. But the bottom line is that if you don't change the environment, you ain't going to change anything. And we know that drugs is a massive driver in this whole thing. When I was filming my documentary, I went to Camden. And if you know Camden quite well, you know that that's the thing about London. It's quite unique, isn't it? You've got multi-million-pound properties mixed in with council blocks, right? And when you look back and you think, hold on, why is there so much of a problem here? It's simple. It's because the middle-class people want the drugs, and the boys are happy to supply. So everyone's feeding each other. And unless we address those issues, nothing really is going to change. I don't want to hog the mic too much, because I'm sure there'll be some questions in that. But that's kind of like some of my take on it. But I'm passionate about this, and that's why I'm here today. I've been up since 3 a.m. But I wouldn't. So I'm here because I want to be here, because I care. I want to see a change.
Today, because of their passion, and this isn't about paychecks. This is about people that are seriously affected, that could have been doing other things today, but wanted to be here to contribute and give their expertise and their opinions. Thank you very much for that, and obviously we will come back to you. I'm sure people have got lots of questions. I just wanted to touch on something you said, because you talked about obviously things like council estates and the way people grow up and what one may see in their neighbourhood that's unattainable to them. But would you agree on the panel that actually this is something that is also trickling out of that kind of, that stereotypical thing that we've heard, where it's a particular type of family in a particular type of area? Or do you think it's, and I want to come to Sheldon on this in a sec, but obviously
there's lots of people that live in council houses that are really successful, they don't commit crime. So again, it is down to your individual circumstance. Like when I was a kid growing up, you were growing up in a council house, but I had my mum and my dad there. My dad, who was going to bust my ass if I did anything wrong, so it's kind of like...
About balance.
I wasn't... This is the key thing. I was not allowed to hang outside on the street. Yeah, my bedtime was 7 p.m, even in the summertime when it was sunshine, and there's kids playing... But it is just about having that strict regime, as far as I'm concerned, as to why I wasn't walking the street. Why are kids walking the streets at 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night? Why are parents not saying... or asking the question, where is my child?
They're at work.
Not always. But there's some parents that are at work because they have to be, because they're trying to put food on the table. You know, if you're a single mum and you're working 2 jobs so that you can feed your child, I fully understand that. And that is how, unfortunately, some children do fall into gangs because parents aren't around, so they get lost to the streets, into the street family.
Can I interject there? Because I think part of it is delivery as well in terms of even that exchange. Because as you say, we talk about the family, and if you're a parent that is working hard to raise your child, and you're hearing on a mainstream media, not the RTE actually, but a different one, a radio station that I will not mention, that part of the problem is these parents who are at work should be home looking after their children. If you're at home, you're a bum and you should be at work. So you can't win. But then, you know, you've got this other side of it where, like you quite rightly said, when we are out there working hard, it also exposes our children to things that we're unfortunately not there to directly take care of. I don't want to cut you out, but I just want to bring Sheldon in here if that's okay. What's your take on that, Sheldon, in terms of what we just talked about with, you know, parents or stereotyping or where this problem might have grown or changed the way it looks? Should we on?
Is it on? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My take's quite simple. I mean, anytime we have a meeting or a seminar, conference like this, there's always a lot of blame going around. So sometimes we kind of want to blame the police, then we want to blame the council, then we want to blame different statutory agency. And I think sometimes that blame culture is a kind of deflection, because the biggest problem isn't the government, because the government didn't tell you to have a child. The biggest problem is us. It's as simple as that. And I think the point that Alex has made, I don't think people are sinking in. He was explaining the importance of what he's dad. And I'm going to tell you, as a person that goes around the world, forget about England, I have found one common denominator. In America, the Caribbean, South America, and here. All these young men and women involved in this lifestyle, at least 80 to 90% of them have no fathers. I'm not quite sure why we keep talking as if this is not a problem. We have a crisis in our communities. Now, I know in London it's significantly different, because in London, we do have a problem with black kids. I don't care what anyone wants to say. We can all sit here and pretend because we want to try and make out like everyone's involved. Yes, outside of London, everyone is involved. But in London, 80% of the gang members are black. There are no white gangs in London. Let me tell you who the white gangs are. They're called football hooligans. That's who they are. And every white kid that is in a gang in London is in a black gang. So we need to wake up, and part of the problem is the black community doesn't want to take ownership of that. They want to deflect every single time. Now, when we talk about single parents, we're not attacking mothers. Please don't look at this as an attack. We've got to face responsibility. Most of these young men who are having children only want to have sex with the woman. They don't want to have a family. And the problem with a lot of girls is that they're getting caught up with this idea that the guy likes them. Most of these guys that are on the road don't like girls. They just want to have sex. And I think what's happened in the 80s is that we're now feeling the burden of that, because those kids are the ones who are committing some serious problems on the road, regardless of the race. The point I'm saying is this: until we, as a society, look at societal change, which means men should be accountable for what they have brought into the world. I'm not saying you should stay with the woman, I'm saying you should be made accountable. But what the community doesn't do is that we don't make the men accountable. We attack the government as if to say the government told you to have a child. Now don't get me wrong, the government have its place, which is to make sure the education system is good, make sure you get jobs, make sure you get apprenticeship. I understand that. But let me tell you something, before your child goes to school, they have to come out your own. And as Alex said, because I go around this country and other countries, we've got children as young as 10 and 11 who are out on the street until 1 o'clock in the morning. Who are you going to blame for that? Are we going to constantly blame, oh, it's the government's fault? The mothers who work, we're not talking about the mothers who work. I'm talking about the 80% of gang members who are in Feltham, Cookham and Pentonville whose mums don't work. And I don't know why we keep talking about mothers who work. We're not talking about those mothers who work. Those are good mums. What we're talking about is the mums who don't work and the dads who are not accountable. We cannot keep blaming everyone for our mistakes. I was a big mistake in my life. Major. I was at crisis. And do you know why? Because I was in denial of the truth. Which was, I wanted to blame the white man for everything that happened to me. Until I met a man called Jesse Jackson one day. And the man sat me down and said, listen here, young brother. Until you've seen brothers hanging from a tree, shut up. Because I didn't see a brother hanging from a tree. All I saw was a policeman call me a gollywog. Compare that to a man hanging from a tree. And the problem makes me realise, that made me realise for the first time, there's always going to be somebody with worse problems than you. How long are you going to continue to blame? And he said to me, if you want to make change in this world, change yourself. And if we as a community want to make change, stop blaming the police. Stop blaming the local government and look at yourself. Because I can assure you, if we trace back one of our brothers or uncles, I guarantee they're not looking after their children. So before we start talking about everyone else, we need to start raising our own kids. Because I tell you something, what is happening today is unbelievable. Our children is running amok. And we're so busy divided because we can't agree. We're so busy trying to show off because our organisation does this, that, that. I'm not interested. I'm not here to talk about what Gangsline does. I'm here to talk about we, as a community, black and white, need to take responsibility. If you're a mum and you don't know where your child is, whose fault is that? If you're a dad and you're not raising your child, whose fault is that? I'm a black man that grew up in a terrible time period. I grew up in a time that some of you have never experienced, where when I walked down the street, I weren't sure if I was going to make it home, whether the National Front was going to beat the daylights out of me, or the racist police officers was going to kidnap me and drive me down to Dover and dump me over the sea. I weren't sure about that. But let me tell you something. When I went to America and I met up with Jesse Jackson, he put me in my place. And he said, you've got two choices, young brother. You can hate the white man, or you can fix yourself. And if you want to hate the white man, he told me where I was going to end up, in a grave. Because there's only so much white man you can kill. So what I realized, I wanted to fix myself. And come back here and acknowledge my part in what I did in my community, to go back to other brothers. So I got myself educated, on par with anyone in this room. So that when I speak to brothers, I'm speaking from an experience that yes, we are suffering, yes, we are struggling, but we can turn it around if we stop blaming, stop hating. Because remember, what this is all about is love. We lack love because my mum and dad didn't know how to love me. And because my mum didn't know how to love me, I didn't know how to love no one else. So I know how to love now, because if I don't love, what you're going to do is call hate. And we have to stop hating and teach our young brothers, our young sisters to love themselves in order for us to fix this problem. Then we can go to the government and say, well, you know, give me a job.
So I'm going to come to, actually, I think I'm going to ask you ladies who are in the video just to kind of give your take on what you've heard so far. Or what you've heard so far. This is some very passionate things, and I just, you know, obviously, you've all been affected directly. So, and I know in very different ways. For Sherilyn, for you, it was a parent that you lost, and Sarah, for you, it was your son that you lost. So, if I start with you, Sherilyn, very briefly, just tell me, you know, obviously, we're talking about youth violence, we're talking about knife crime, and in your case, I'll let you sort of elaborate on what you said in the video, but these things had a massive impact on you, didn't they? You're not a boy, you're clearly not black. So it comes with some of these issues, and what I want to do is kind of get a real round feel so that when we come to having that continued discussion and questions, that we've got different perspectives. So can we, what do you say in response to some of what you've just heard?
Obviously, I agree with what he's saying, because we had a discussion earlier on when we first walked in, and like he says, if you don't know love, how can you show love? So, you know, I totally agree with what he's saying there, and also, you made obviously quite a lot of valid points, but but obviously for myself, it was my mum. She raised me right. She was a single parent. My dad was just a waste man. He was just like a sperm donor, really. To be fair, I knew who he was, but my mum raised me right. Like Alex said, bed at 7. You can't go past the gate. You know, even though like where we live, like there was a massive green on the front, and like mum's like, no, you can't go past there. You cannot pass past that gate. Like you need to be in.
One of the things you were really passionate about when we first spoke, and I know that you're passionate about in your organisation, is that sometimes when people have been certainly involved in knife crime in terms of committing a crime or, you know, taking a life and things like that, which, you know, unfortunately you were the victim end of, you were saying that it's often overlooked the journey that that person may have had, which is why I link it to some of what was just said in terms of what's their experience of the system, education, family, parenting. And for you, when you looked into that, you found that actually quite changed your attitude, didn't it? To
yeah. So basically, what happened is my mum's best friend's son. He killed my mum. And when me and Algie went into the background of this, you get given like a homicide report that you can freely read. And what was shocking is over 90 pages is that James was failed from such a young age. I think it was at the age of 9 or something like that, when he was like socially not interacting. Like his mum used to, obviously I know them personally, so his mum used to like model coddle him. His first offence was the age of like 15, where he stabbed a friend in the head. So he got like some petty sentence of like four months or something like that. And then when he came out, you know, it was that kind of, oh, he didn't turn up at probation, or he didn't turn up at like other places, or social services, like, you know, they also let him down, you know, because this is clearly a boy who has got mental health, but yet you've managed to slip him under the system. But you don't want to come out to him until he's left my mum dead for 4 days, unaware, and you want to come out and see if he's all right. But by that time it's too late. Like, you should have been a mapper when you came out. So, but the system failed him on that mapper thing. Like, oh no, he's all right. But you've breached like 19 or 17 times. So who is actually at fault for the person who killed my mum? Because he could have been held, but y'all like just want to leave it like that. So my mum's dead because of all everybody else out there that I failed him that day.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I know some of it can be disturbing to hear, but I think it's very important to hear, you know, because these are things that, you know, are really happening to people in our communities, not just in Nottingham, obviously, you know. And it's a side that I think we don't often hear told as openly as this. Sarah, I just want to bring you in here, and I'm going to come to you ladies as specialists, if that's all right. So I know, again, you've had some more time in terms of, you know, in terms of between obviously now and when everything happened with you, and you said that for you it meant that you had a slightly different perspective, didn't you, in terms of what happened, and it was really powerful the way that you actually considered the other family as well. Do you mind telling us a bit more?
Yeah, when before this happened, obviously, you know, you just previous stuff, but when it did happen, the first thing that reached me in court was the day of sentencing of the guy who took my son's life. His mum was so, I was more focused on his mum, and she was so distraught. My mum actually come up to me and she goes, Sarah, go and give her a hug. I said, Mum, I was going to, because at the end of the day, she just carried him. She didn't stab my son. It was her son it wasn't even her son that killed my son. The system killed my son. Because the system failed him, which failed my son, which failed me. So we're all accountable, we're all suffering, all because of the system. I don't blame the white man, don't blame the black man, don't blame the police. It's the system.
And when you say the system, just give me an
So
idea of what you mean.
life changes, as in back
society?
in my day, society. Back in my day, we didn't have mobile phones. We only had channels 1, 2, and 3. We didn't have Sky. We didn't have Virgin. We had to come in when the street lights were going off. You know, whereas now you can pick the phone up, get your backside in the yard. Whereas back in the day now, I look out for the street light, then, do you know what I mean? So it's the system. From they've brought in this, it's all over.
Do you think that's because it's taking power away from parents,
Yeah,
carers, people
yeah.
that would otherwise be?
And then the
able
courts
to
now
monitor?
tell us we can't discipline our children. Well, hear what? A beating never done me no harm when I was growing up, and it didn't do my children no harm neither. But we have to write the system, change our mind. That's why our children are dying. This is why I don't grieve for my children. I grieve for the system.
Thank you for sharing that. So, Marguerite, I'm going to come to you. Is it, we've heard a lot, and people often bring up the education system as a particular area of concern in terms of whether it's identity, whether it's that certain children, and people are not always saying it in terms of race. You are on. It sounds like it isn't. You are saying in terms of race. Sometimes people are saying it's a class issue as well. Sometimes people are saying it's postcode. There's all sorts of different discussions that take place. So again, briefly, I'm going to ask you, what's your take on this in terms of should we be educating better, or should we be doing more harsh sentencing, for example? Quite broad there for you.
I think everybody spoke about education here. I think we've said education in the family. Alex has spoke about parenting from his point of view. Listening to Sherilyn, if I've got it right. She said that she recognised that the perpetrator had been failed. I just want to share some statistics with you. 80% of our boys are in young offenders. Institutions have been excluded. 74% of those are girls. I think I touched on this morning about, certain characteristics. 21% of young people charged with knife offence were excluded, compared to 0.1% of the community. I said this morning. I think the elephant in the room as well is about the exclusion and being an educationalist. There needs to be a curriculum that is fit for purpose for our whatever race, whatever gender, because it clearly isn't. They are getting excluded. I'm working with a family at the moment that the child is primary age who's been excluded from primary school, permanently excluded. There is no school for this child to go to. He's not a bad child. He's been failed. I think somebody mentioned, who was at the table, I think it was you, that was said that there's so many agencies that's been involved in this young child's life, but nobody is providing actually listening to that child and find out exactly what the underpinning problems are. So you can see the future for him. 12 years old, permanently excluded from primary school. There is not one school in the county where this child has been excluded from that will take this child.
And what impact do you think that has on that 12-year-old that is now going into adolescence and obviously
Mum's at work. Mum works. Mum now has to leave child at home. What do you think is going to happen? Daddy's around. Mum and Dad both work. What do you think is going to happen?
Thank you. So, go on, sorry, could you?
I just think it's like, I'm a parent. Like, if I was in that situation, one of us would be staying home. You think I'm going to leave my 12-year-old at home on his own and expect him to get through life? Again, this comes down to the parenting as well. You say that we talk about this system, and I know that there's so many flaws in the system, but if you've got mum and dad at home, something is clearly very wrong, and they need help.
Agreed.
Can I move on from that? I'm going to come to you, Maria, because I do want to get through the panel so that we can obviously start taking questions and start interacting with the other guests. Okay, but Maria, so picking up on that point, it should be. Look at straight to work. Picking up on that point, obviously your specialism is in
social care. So
social
I'm
care.
a social worker. I worked in children's social care for 12 years. I've now removed myself from the system because of various issues, and I've gone independent, so I'm now a self-employed independent social worker. I do believe there's lots of issues in the social care system, and a lot of that is to do with discrimination, oppression, institutionalised racism and unconscious bias. We have a lot of professionals working with our children, young people. They can't connect to them, they can't engage with them, they haven't got the life experience. The young people that I work with, so I specialise in working with very high risk, high profile adolescents. A lot of them was involved in various things. A lot of them was in secure units, a lot of them was in young offenders institutes. And a lot of the young people that I work with, they won't work with anybody else. So I had cases that if I tried to bring another professional in, they would just try and terrorise them. There's only certain professionals that young people will work with. So they feel that they've got a connection with you. They feel, the thing is, with young people, they have to like you first. If they don't like you, they won't work with you. The thing is, with young people, a lot of them have trust issues and attachment issues. If they don't trust you, they won't work with you. A lot of them, you have to build a relationship up with them. You have to be consistent. You can't just dip in and out of their life. You need to be there for a long, long time, because sometimes with some of these young people, it takes a long time to build up a relationship. All of my young people, I work with them from one girl that I worked with from the age of 13 to, I'm still in contact with her now, even though I've left social care. So it's about relationships, it's about trust, it's about the connection, it's whether you can relate to young people. And there's a lot of workers out there that don't possess the emotional intelligence and the empathy to work with young people. You have to understand where these young people come from.
Can I ask then, is that you saying people are going to the profession that perhaps the training needs to change? Or are you saying...
I've come into the profession, so my story is behind every person that does this job that's very passionate, they have a story. Behind every young person, they have a story. So my story is, I got kicked out of school at 15. I was out on road from the age of 15 to 21. At the age of 21, I nearly went to prison. So from that moment, I thought it's down to me now. I have to fix up. I have to change my life. And that's when I went into education and I've done what I did. And I had a young person ask me, Maria, she sat in my car next to me, she said, Maria, how did you become a social worker? So I just told her my story. And hopefully I can be an inspiration to other young people, and hopefully I can be a mentor to other young people, because, you know, people can always change.
And I think that's the important, it's a good point, time to point out, probably something touched on earlier, is that stereotyping can work both ways. So you might see someone who's a social worker or a teacher or an educator, whatever, and make a lot of presumptions or assumptions without actually knowing that person.
There are some good social workers out there.
That's to say, yeah.
They're not all bad, but I'm just saying, from my personal experience, working in the children's social care in the system for 12 years, there's not many social workers who can relate to and that connect to and build a positive, trusting relationship with children and young people, and that's what they need. These young people in care, they haven't got no one. They haven't got families. They haven't got parents. So they need someone consistent in their life, someone that they can trust. Because a lot of them are young people and children. They won't speak to police. They won't speak to social workers.
Thank you. I'm not going to come to that a bit more. So before I hand over to Cecile to chair the questions, I'm going to just ask Dr Nadine Taylor to also you know, to give us your opinion. I just wanted, again, just to ask you something. We touched on it, I think, in different ways, but that whole sense of identity, especially when it comes to adolescence, or even younger sometimes, that period in our lives when everything outside of us matters, when we're soaking up so many influences from elsewhere. And then, you know, we've heard about perhaps the experience we might have in school, or the experience that you might have in terms of your family and things like that. But there's also an added thing, isn't there, when especially if you've been affected by violent crime or involved in any way, that you've got a kind of added anxiety, or there's added issues that you're probably dealing with on a day-to-day. So just give us, again, your take on what you think, you know, what it looks like to be a teenager who may be affected, you know, or how a teenager affected today, and how, you know, that may affect them as human beings going forward.
I suppose I agree with what many people on the panel have said this afternoon regarding actually having that one trusted person for Alex, whether it was Dad, that he knew that he would kick his backside if he stepped out of line. I think what we are aware of is that actually a lot of people... Is it not on? I do apologise. People hear me? Yeah. Sorry, needed nearer to my mouth. Apologies. What we know is a lot of people that engage in gang activity or engage in the criminal justice system actually have a lot of adverse childhood experiences, and actually is a part of the root causes of why people engage in these behaviours. But actually, what happens is, so I come from a background of working in the prison service and secure units with adults, children, and both males and females. And what I find the problem is that we are trying to wrest away the problem or detain away the problem, and actually we're not looking at the root causes and actually what some of the protective factors are. Exactly what Alex and Sheldon have said is actually having that one trusted person. That does not have to be mum if mum's constantly at work. We have to think about actually, like you said, around identity, who is the person that will best connect with that person? Is it in schools? And if it is in schools, why on earth are we excluding our children at a ridiculous rate when school acts as a safeguarding factor for these children? So we need to think about what are these services, and that's why this networking opportunity is fantastic today. What are the right services for this person? Who's going to best tap into what their needs are and how we can support them so that they have that one trusted, protective factor.
Great, thank you very much.
Is this on? Is it on? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Can I ask? With a range of issues have been raised about parents, their capacity, their capability, etc. Should we look at how we might support parents who are not coping? Okay, can we look at how we do support parents? The other thing is, we're in a situation where provision for young people, society's been quite cruel to young people. They've cut youth services, they've cut the voluntary sector that used to support our young people. They've even cut school budgets. So schools are no longer able to provide the support for the young person at child that you referred to, educational psychologist services. So in a situation where austerity has been the mantra that has cut away the infrastructure that was there to support our vulnerable families, children, etc., what do we need to do to reverse that situation? Clearly, working at somebody's needs psychologically and invoking agency takes time, but there are things that we can do. Going back to your point about the system, why is it that the system has taken away resources from young people?
Thank you.
That's right, somebody's just said there's more
You
money in the
want to
problem.
Okay, open it up to the floor.
You want to open it up? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I thought they were with Mike. Do you want me to take different questions? Yeah. So Logan opened up to the floor. Sorry, we just didn't realise all the microphone out.
It's just something blatantly obvious to me that there is more money in the problems that they have. Obviously, they make more money on the mental health. They charge people in the police station now for them detaining them.